been a contender.
Hulk, smash.
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me.
Here's Johnny.
Wait, 21 gigawatts!
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
You never go ass to mouth.
Now what is so damn funny?
And here we go.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight.
Force will be with you. Always.
But the truth! You can't handle the truth! Showtime, everybody! Showtime!
Deck the halls and Jingle Bell Rock. We are here for the For Real Movie Club, and this month we will be talking about Christmas movies. And here on the panel tonight, from Fanboys Anonymous, the CEO, founder, and the man behind the curtain, Tony Mango.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to be the Grinch for this episode, so stay tuned for all that.
Also joining us from New York, Mr. Payton.
I'm going to be Tim Allen, I guess. Next I said up more like Cookie Monster.
And also, newcomer to the show, Lauren, and I don't know your last name because I'm a terrible host.
That's okay. Lauren's fine.
Sweet.
Just Lauren.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to kick things off talking about a very old movie, and that is It's a Wonderful Life, because you cannot think Christmas without thinking It's a Wonderful Life. What do you know about that? So let's kick off things. Tony, what's your initial impression, Mr. Grinch, on It's a Wonderful Life?
Well, we're actually, thankfully, starting off with the movie that I like the best out of this. So, It's a Wonderful Life is a movie that I've always wanted to watch because everybody always talks about it being a classic. And usually when that happens, I assume it sucks because most people are like, Casablanca, best movie ever. And I start watching it and I'm like, this kind of got some plot holes in it. Or, Gone with the Wind, where everybody goes nuts over Wizard of Oz. And I fucking hate that movie. But I always wanted to watch It's a Wonderful Life. And I assumed that I was going to absolutely hate it, but I like the basic structure of the movie. The only thing that I have a little issue with, and we'll elaborate a little bit more on this, but the old timiness of it does get to me, and I'm gonna be that type of guy that everybody's gonna hate by saying this is the type of movie that I think I would like so much more if they remade it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so everybody already hates me. I established that. We'll figure this out later on. But it's a good movie that could be better, is what I should say.
With, like, robots and a new lightsaber, you'll be good to go?
I don't know. BB-8's kind of cool.
Michael Bay produced. It'd be great. Lauren, what was your initial impression and first thoughts on the film It's a Wonderful Life?
I first saw it a long time ago. I was kind of forced to watch it by my parents. They're like, you gotta, sit and watch this. And we're like, no, you don't want to. And my dad was like, well, if you tell me the meaning of the movie, I'll give you $50. So, of course, I sat and watched it to find the real meaning behind it.
I want that deal.
So, it is old-timey. And that makes it funny in parts that probably shouldn't be funny. But I don't know. I think I could agree with wanting to make a remake, but I think me personally would just critique every little thing like, oh, well, the original, they did this and, it was better. And then, so I guess I contradict myself. Good movie.
Mike, what were your initial thoughts on It's a Wonderful Life?
Something I noticed with It's a Wonderful Life that I've learned about a lot of movies as we're watching this are movies that I haven't seen or I haven't seen in a long time. And I only remember the things that are often pulled from them to the point of parodying it. And It's a Wonderful Life is one of those movies where they really do that. Previous examples we've done on the show was like Weekend at Bernie's, or most recently for our Thanksgiving episode, Scent of a Woman. My impression of Scent of a Woman, that it was 2.5 hours of hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. And it was so much more than that. And that goes for this movie, too. I mean, you see this parodied so many times with the person being taken by a guardian angel and shown the past or what their life would be like, or the world would be like if they were never born. And you tend to forget that what the actual original source of it was like. So going back and seeing that and seeing how much of that movie there was before they even got to that part, seeing just the setup of this guy's life and the slow downward spiral into what it got into, it was really neat to get that watched again and relearn and see why this is a movie that cemented itself in there and it's why it's lasted so long. Because Christmas movies come and go. We're doing Jingle All the Way, and right now I walk through the stores and I just see heavy advertisements for Jingle All the Way 2. I tell you, no one's going to be watching Jingle All the Way 2 for a Christmas podcast show in 10 years.
Ew,
It's a Wonderful Life, though. What is it? What are we on, 60 years here? 70?
I think more than that.
Yeah. Just give a little facts on the movie, which is a great segue. The release date was December 20th, 1946, so like right after World War II.
Listen,
Director. It was directed by and produced by Frank Capra, with screenplay Francis Goodrich, Albert Hackett, Joe Swerling, and Frank Capra. It's based on The Greatest Gift by Philip Van Doren Stern, with way too many names. And it stars James Stewart, Donna Reed, Lionel Barrymore, and Henry Travers. So when we get to casting, that's one thing we talk about with all our films here. We'll go back right to you, Mike. What did you think on the casting for It's a Wonderful Life?
Well, I'm bad at knowing modern celebrities, who they are, as I've said previously, but you go back to this time period, and I barely know who any of these people are. I mean, Jimmy Stewart's name I've become familiar with just because of who he is, but anyone else on this, I don't know who the heck they are. I think they were all fine, though. There was no one that stuck out to me like, oh, this person's putting in a horrible performance. I would say the standouts would, of course, be Jimmy Stewart and his, what are you talking about? Gosh darn. See? Hot tags. Mr. Potter was fantastically played as well as this crotchety old man in his wheelchair. We never saw any resolution with Mr. Potter, by the way, which is one thing that kind of bugs me about this movie. And the and the stereotypical sassy maid.
Yes. Dude, I literally have sassy maid in my notes. That's so funny.
Oh, she was fantastic. What was the one line? It's like, Jimmy Stewart's like, oh, well, why don't you just pull up a sit so you could hear clearer? Well, if I thought there was something worth hearing, maybe I would. I imagine if they did a modern remake, they could really do something great with that character.
Well, speaking of modern remakes, so, I mean, that's been mentioned a couple times. Do you feel that there are any actors today that could deliver the performance just to make it as iconic or not better?
No, and this was something I wanted to bring up at some point. I don't know if now is the best time, but the qualifications of what is good acting and what makes a good film are so different now. I don't think you could find someone who would fit that role, unless they're just hiding somewhere on a stage somewhere. But I don't think we have any actors who are that genuine and earnest that they could do that. No. Everyone these days is so focused on being like either hot or stupid funny.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone just focuses on being like a genuine actor like that anymore.
Tom Hanks.
Ooh, but he's kind of old now. If it was 15 years ago, Tom Hanks, would be a good option.
Very interesting.
I guess you could CGI his face. They did it for the dude.
Tony, what were your thoughts on the casting and potential, if they remade it, who could step into these shoes?
Well, as far as the sassy maid goes, which that's so funny that you said sassy maid too. That's literally the only note that I have written down for her because I figured I could go off of that. Octavia Spencer would definitely fit that role for me. Anybody who has seen her in Red Band Society, which is a show that's probably going to get canceled, which is a shame because it's awesome. She could play this part fantastically. And there's another line in the movie too that I really liked with her, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it was something like the mom says something about like us getting old, and she's just like, "Hey, speak for yourself," or something. Like, she's gonna like crazy white people. Like, it's so fantastic. I don't know about the Jimmy Stewart thing. Jimmy Stewart's one of those guys that I think people attribute a certain caliber of quality to him that I don't really think is 100% justified. Not to say that he's a terrible actor or anything, because he clearly isn't. But I think that if you pulled Jimmy Stewart from back then and you put him out there now, he wouldn't last. And
no, standards have changed. Again, that's not what people want to see these days.
Yeah, but even if that wasn't exactly what we want to see now, I think that a lot of things were easier back then. And when you had less competition, a lot of things were made that much better. Now, I don't know if there is another person that could have played the part from nowadays. Yeah, off the top of my head, I really can't think of anybody other than the Tom Hanks thing. But as far as like sticking in the time period that it was in, I don't really know if anybody really could have been better. I don't know a whole lot of older actors and actresses Donna Reed was great in this. I usually kind of am a sourpuss when it comes to, well, I don't see what's so great about her when people are talking about the beautiful women of the back in the day, and I'm like, yeah, she's not bad, but like Marilyn Monroe's overrated to me. Donna Reed here, I could see myself being into her if I were watching this back then, and so credit to
look at the gams. She's showing all the way up to her knees. Real racy.
I don't think I would rub my cheek on her constantly like Jimmy Stewart does, which was very creepy. It was just kind of like, what was her fucking character's name? I don't know. I was just gonna call her Donna, but like Mary, sure. He's just like, Mary, like I'll kiss you, but I really just want to rub my cheek. I want to act like a dog or something. Potter, like Peyton said, Potter was great, and I actually like that he doesn't really get his comeuppance because the bad guys sometimes sort of win, and it's nice to see a movie back then when they had like more rules and regulations of like what they could and couldn't do, like the comic book code back in the day where you couldn't show anybody who's a villain not get their comeuppance, and the same thing could apply to a lot of movies. You know what? That doesn't happen in real life, and even though this clearly is not real life, it's a Wonderful Life. It's a situation where he doesn't need to get like dragged away and taken to the jail cell because of this kind of stuff. But he probably would have done a good job in that scene anyway, because he was a real asshole. So
you actually like dragging him with like his dead legs.
They break the old-fashioned wheelchair and they're just dragging it. He's just like, I've got money, you son of a bitch. They're like, you can't curse in this movie. It's not whatever.
Lauren, what were your thoughts on the casting and a potential cast for a remake?
I love Jimmy Stewart. His movies are like on my definitely favorites. But as far as, I mean, everybody else, like, Mr. Potter definitely was perfect. Mary, I think she's pretty, but she's not overly gorgeous, which is kind of more believable and realistic for Jimmy Stewart.
Take that, Jimmy Stewart.
And that's coming from a girl. Not just us being jerks.
No offense, but I mean, he's good looking in his own way, but I mean,
he's got kind of a big nose.
Yeah.
It's a big cheek.
He's like that like tall, lanky. I'm trying to think like anybody that could really play him now.
Carrot Top. Actually, Carrot Top got ripped, so even he couldn't do it anymore.
I mean, like I'm trying to think of like modern day actors, and like the only ones that come to mind are like.
You know who would have been good? Full House era Bob Saget.
I could see that.
I could see that.
Like before everyone realized that he's actually like kind of nutso and dirty.
Yeah.
Before
like
the
that.
Aristocrats, right?
Yeah. like the Full House / America's Funniest Home Videos era Bob Saget.
The one that would rub his cheek
supple.
instead of rubbing something else.
So another thing that really stems out of this movie is just the idea of what life would be without me in the future. And many films have touched base on this several times on this theme. One of the films is in 1990 it was Mr. Destiny, and in 2000 The Family Man with Nick Cage followed this movie with the whole storyline of what would happen if I wasn't where I was today and what impact it would have. There was actually I guess a remake in 1977 according to Wikipedia, because that's where I get all my information. Where they flipped the roles and had Mary Bailey be the one who was chasing a world without her. And Cloris Leachman was in it as the angel Clara Oddbody. And Leachman had received her second Emmy nomination for this role. So this general theme of the what's life without me scenario, it's so impactful. Do you we'll start with you, Tony. Do you think this is like why this movie resonates so well with people, or just because it's like, oh, it's a classic, so you have to watch it?
A little of column A and a little of column B. I think a lot of people like classics because they've been told that they're a classic and that they should. And to the movie's credit, I think that the storyline itself does warrant a huge following, because that's something that a lot of people feel. And I wouldn't go so far as to say everybody, because some people are so stuck up that they can never even imagine a world without them. And some people are unfortunately already beaten down to the point where they take their own life for real. But I'm somebody who thinks about this kind of question quite a bit, I hate to admit. And watching any kind of movie that deals with that kind of a subject, it makes you think twice about certain things, and it starts to kind of bring back memories from your past that you kind of go, well, you know, if I wasn't around, would this have been better? Would this have been worse? And the fact that they give you a good message here of, you know, you shouldn't just beat yourself up about everything, and yeah, life might not be as great as it seems like it could be at certain times, but there's a lot of other things that you should appreciate, and one of those things is yourself. That's something that isn't said a whole lot. It's tough to find a situation where you can kind of pat yourself on the back and not feel conceited. So that's actually the thing that I really liked about this movie, was its message.
Peyton, what was your thoughts on the message and like why it's considered such a classic?
Well, a good message will always be timeless, and this put it out there. And you know, I can't speak for as far as trying to like explain a theory about why that is, but I could just back it up by saying that the whole story of It's a Wonderful Life and the whole message that it puts through in the end has been parodied so many times on so many different TV shows. It's perhaps probably the most common thing you've seen throughout like sitcoms, except for maybe like Everybody Stuck in an Elevator. But besides that, I think every single show has had a point where they have a character that goes through the same situation that George Bailey did.
Those damn elevators.
Bastards. Lauren, what were your thoughts on the theme and what made it a classic?
I mean, like kind of like what everybody's been saying. Like everyone always thinks about what things would be like now, or what things could have maybe gone different if you weren't around. And I mean, like even Rugrats did this, where they had Chucky. Like, oh, you know, what would it be like if I was never born?
Of course, it was Chucky.
Because he's all woe is me, and then he realizes, wow, all the grown-ups now worship Angelica, so I gotta stay. You know, I gotta stick around.
That's such a great way for Rugrats to do it.
So, you know, I mean, the message is timeless. I think that's why it's such a classic and a favorite.
That would have been great if Chucky sees himself and it's like his dad's much better off. He's like, oh, I'm not weighed down by this kid.
He's like a weirdo that has a sock puppet and watches C-SPAN.
Probably does that anyway.
That's when Chucky goes to bed.
Yeah. I want you to meet your new mom.
Oh, that's bad. One thing I'd like to talk about before we wrap up and give our final thoughts on this movie is it's such a powerful message. It's such an iconic film, and you can't think Christmas without thinking this, especially that last line where the little girl goes, every time a bell rings, an angel gets her wings. Speaking of that girl, there's a story going around where there's an unauthorized sequel being aimed for a 2015 release, which is currently in development. And it'll be called It's a Wonderful Life, the rest of the story.
Really? They didn't go for It's a More Wonderful Life or something like that?
They're going to be following the daughter Zuzu, played once again by Carolyn Grimes.
What?
As she teaches Bailey's, get this, evil grandson how different the world would have been if he had never been born.
And so, it's positive.
Yeah. I have to know, what are your thoughts? We'll start with you, Mike. Should they do a sequel? Should somebody stop this before it happens?
I mean, if someone wants to waste their money on it, that sounds like their own stupidity. I have a feeling this will be pretty harmless and not actually be seen by anybody. This will probably just end up in the discount DVD bin the Christmas that it comes out, and then we'll never have to hear about it again, except for when we're watching some like YouTuber do a review about how bad it is.
It'll be me. I'll be that YouTuber.
Exactly.
Lauren, what are your thoughts on a potential sequel if they somehow obtain the rights to do this?
No, it's like you can't, like, don't beat a dead horse kind of thing, or no, not don't beat a dead horse, but don't.
What if the horse was never born?
Crash!
Somebody's like, man, I gotta walk.
Like, too much of a good thing is, you got a good thing, don't just quit while you're ahead. That is what I was looking for. Quit while you're ahead, not beat it.
It's been sitting for 50 years.
It's like, just leave it alone. You know, just leave it alone. Anything else is gonna suck.
Tony, what are your thoughts on a potential sequel?
If you're gonna go sequel, don't make it about Zuzu. Make it the buddy. No, hear me out. Make it the buddy spinoff we want to see.
Isn't Zuzu the bird from Lion King?
Thank you.
Isn't that the name of the daughter?
Yeah, that's the name of the daughter. Yeah, but it's also the bird from Lion King. So.
No, that was Zazu.
I think
Zazu. Oh.
I think what they need to go with is the buddy spinoff. All right, now Jimmy Stewart's already died, and we make this about him and the angel, and it's a wonderful death, and we just beat that drum instead, because I don't want to see anything about some evil granddaughter or grandson or whatever the fuck.
Spins off into the Omen. It's Damien.
Yeah. I would pay to watch that.
It's just a big ad for Ginger Snaps.
Oh man, we'll start with you, Tony. What are your final thoughts and a rating 1 to 10 on It's a Wonderful Life?
All right. Well, as I said, the old timiness kind of gets to me a little bit. Some of the dialogue, really, at times, I kind of just paused and laughed. You know, the whole hot dog, and easily one of the biggest times in the movie where I was just like floored with how old it was. Oh yes, it's the big Charleston contest. Like, oh, well, shit, I've been waiting for this. Thank God. And the super happy choreography with this one dude, I rewound it a bunch of times because he was super happy.
The guy's like sidestepping as he's like twirling his hands.
He gets into the shot and he's just kind of like, oh my God, it's the big fucking Charleston contest. You have no idea how happy I am. There's some lines in it, though, that kind of make up for it a little bit. And they're still a little bit cheesy, but the whole I'll give you the moon thing, I'm like, okay, I'll buy into that. And I'll love at least one scene of this movie just because of how that kind of makes it funny. And that's the whole, well, your money's in Joe's house, and it's right next door to yours, and it's in the Kennedy's house. And oh my God, I love the Simpsons parody of that, so by default, I had to love that. But when it comes to favorites and least favorite parts and stuff, my least favorite part had to be the angel himself. And he was just a character that I didn't really like. He seemed kind of obnoxious and annoying. And if that was supposed to be cutesy, well, fuck off, Angel. Like, I don't want to be around you anymore. Can you just, like, show me, get a different angel to help do this? That's why you don't have your wings. By the way, if anybody's curious about the bells and the angels getting their wings, listen to the Raw post show, however many times the however bell goes off.
Oh, we've helped a lot of angels.
Yeah. My favorite scene, it's an odd choice. I'm sure everybody would be like, why did you go with this? But the very, very beginning, how they had the celestial bodies, or whatever you would want to call them, the stars, talking like they apparently parodied in Futurama. I thought that was a really nice touch, and I've always liked that in Futurama, but...
Really nice touch? You mean how they just glowed a little bit?
No, I liked how they...
Cutting-edge special effects.
I liked how they did that instead of showing some kind of an Abrahamic god creature or something like that. It was a way to sort of, like, dial it down a little bit and make it accessible to a lot of different people that might not like the movie for the religious overtones to it, because... I'm not a really religious person, so if they would have really beaten that into my head, I would have been like, oh, I get it, God's amazing, whatever. But having, this kind of like otherworldliness to that was like more of a Christmas spirit kind of a thing, as opposed to all about God and Jesus and these kind of beliefs and stuff. So I think it's more accessible that way. Rating out of 10? Originally I had written down a 6, so I got to bump it up to a 7. There's a little bit of things that I think could be better. Maybe that's the old timiness, maybe not. But the more time that's going by since I've watched this, the more I can give it credit. So I don't know. Maybe tomorrow I'll give it an 8.
Lauren, what was your final thoughts on the movie and high points, low points, and a ranking 1 to 10?
Overall, I mean, I think I got to understand it more and appreciate it more as I get older. Because when you're a kid, you just like, okay, whatever, you know, this is it. But then when you actually kind of go through the stuff that he's going through and you kind of look at it as from an adult's point of view, it makes you like step back and think. I'm getting like real deep right now. And like you really step back and you look at yourself and you think, you know, how many people actually need you. So, low points would be the cheesy humor. I mean, that's kind of...
But we all love cheesy humor.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, that's beating a dead horse. There we go.
I know how to use that term correctly.
But I don't know, not as far as like, besides like the cheesy humor and the, you know, stereotypical stuff, you know, I mean, it, not really any other significant low points. I would probably give it like a 7.5.
Cool. Mr. Payton, what would you rank it 1 to 10? And I have no idea what happened. What would you rank it 1 to 10? And what were your final thoughts and high point, low point?
Well, It's a Wonderful Life is a wonderful movie. I was very pleasantly surprised watching this back. I probably am not going to make this any kind of huge tradition. I don't really watch tons of Christmas movies every Christmas season. In fact, the only one I've watched with any type of consistency every Christmas is another one we're watching later. So we'll discuss that one. This one, I'll watch it when it's on. I'll watch it if it's around. I'm not going to ignore it. I think as a kid, I was really turned off to this, so I never really fully watched it all the way through. It may have just been the black and white, or even worse, I think it may be the fact that I've been seeing it because back in like the 90s, it was really big to watch old black and white movies, but colorized, and that was just an awful phase in movie history. I think they pass some kind of like law or something where you can't colorize old movies anymore.
They should.
I think there was something. I think like George Lucas helped pass that or something. Movie itself is just timeless. I mean, if you put a good story there, it's going to be good forever unless you do something stupid like put dated jokes in there. And I guess to an extent you could say that they had some like those dated 50s references in there, like the Charleston contest and and the sayings and, you know, the moxie and all that. But the story in there will ring true forever. And as Lauren said, as an adult, you realize that even more. One of my favorite bands, Rilo Kiley, has a line in one of their songs. It's your gradual descent into a life you've never meant. And watching that unfold for George Bailey was just like a heartbreaking story to see about how this guy had all this drive to go out there and see the world and take it over. And just one thing at a time kept him from doing that. And he did the right thing, you know, trying to keep the family business going, taking care of everybody. But it sometimes wasn't always what he wanted, and eventually that burden weighed down on him too much. But in the end, he was still a very rich man. He still had a lot good going for him, and I think that's just a feel-good story. How can anybody possibly hate that?
And would your ranking 1 out of 10?
I'll go with a 7.5. I actually probably would give it higher if it wasn't so dated in those aspects. And one other aspect that was a little bit dated, but not as bad as a lot of other movies from this time, as a film editor myself, it bothers the hell out of me when I watch these older movies and see how clunky the editing was back then. Like, they'll start fading into the next scene before, like, they're done saying the final line of the scene before. And it just drives me nuts how bad the timing is on that. So there was a few instances of that in this movie, but not as horrendous as some other older movies, so I can't be too mad about it.
Or some current movies.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
So we've just left It's a Wonderful Life, and we'll be jumping about 3 decades ahead to a stop-motion animated television special, The Year Without a Santa Claus. So if you're listening here on YouTube, make sure you click the next link or let the whole playlist thing do its work and knock you down to the next film or whatever it does. I don't know. It's fancy internets. And we'll be talking about The Year Without a Santa Claus. So thank you for listening, and make sure you click the next video.